Well, it looks like our time enjoying this new map is finally over. And I'll be honest, for me, this map is so much better than the old map. It's not perfect, but there are so many huge improvements over what we used to have in OPR. And I'm really sad that we're going to be going back to the old map now because, to be honest, man, I mean, we got a taste of what PvP could be when we have a proper map for OPR. And I know Amazon still wants to make some changes to this map, but hear me out. They should just make this the new OPR map. Just scrap the old one entirely. Maybe some people like the old map, and that's okay, but holy crap, the amount of builds that are more viable on this map is just the biggest argument for it. You can play all kinds of different setups, you can play melee-only setups, and you can enjoy fighting all over the map instead of being confined to just a keep or a single feature of terrain. Now, for this video, I'm going to show you guys just the melee build that I was playing, and there is no way that I could have this much fun with a build like this on the old OPR map. If you guys are interested in this build, there's going to be a breakdown at the end of the video, and there's a written guide linked down below if you guys are into that. But getting back to the topic at hand, whether Amazon wants to keep making changes to this map or not, I think that they should just make it the new OPR map because a majority of the PvP player base love this map. They love the builds you can play on it. And man, I don't think people want to go back to the old map. We got a taste of what it could be. We got to see how much better PvP could be. And I don't think people are going to be really happy when we log in today and we're not going to be able to play this map anymore. So Amazon, really consider this. I know you might still want to make changes, but just consider letting us keep this map because, oh my god, I don't want to see you guys shoot yourselves in the foot again. There's so many times with this game that there are changes that should be made, that will be made, but Amazon just takes forever. They drag their feet. They just don't give us the content in time. And I don't know if it's just something like, oh, they want to wait until a certain release date to up their numbers. Amazon, your numbers wouldn't drop if you just gave us these updates right away. The map isn't perfect. There's terrain that people are crawling on that some people have a problem with, but honestly, there's so many features everywhere. There's so much line of sight on this map. It just lets you play all these different builds to full effect, even when you have guys standing up top sniping. I would rather take this map with people standing up top than the old OPR map with snipers in every single fort any day of the week. But yeah, I'm going in circles now. I want to see them do what the player base wants them to do, but fucking Amazon sometimes. Oh my god, you just gotta be a company first, don't you? Anyway, let's get into that PvP commentary and enjoy the last few moments that we got to have on this beautiful map, at least until who knows when we'll actually get to play this again. So this build, guys, really mobile using Grace. I think you could go for a different weapon combo with it if you wanted. Go for maybe Serenity or even the Dogart's Blade Rapier so you get those really strong burns on your Greatsword heavies. But this weapon combo in general is just a lot of fun to play, and with this kind of terrain, we can weave in between everything and get on top of those range guys before they're too much damage into us, basically. So, we get on top of the rage guy here. I managed to get a good crosscut on him. A friendly player comes in to come help out a little bit, and I just stay on top of the sword and board fire staff player there. He starts swinging his sword at me, and I just exchange with the Greatsword. I don't think he's using Inferno because he was not hitting super hard with that. And then we transition to the healer here because we're not going to beat these guys. Huge heal on the target that we were trying to take down there. Yeah, we got to take this guy down first. The friendly player gets a good damage with his rapier. I quickly switch to mine and I try to get a few pokes in. Go for the Greatsword, the heavy attack into the crosscut. Cancel it on the roll. He goes down. Unfortunately, my friendly guy there going down as well. Maybe he should have got some cleanse pots to deal with those fire staves, and this guy's looking at his bag or something. I quickly throw a couple pokes into him, and then I turn around on the flamethrower guy here, saving my cleanse pot for when I'm all dotted up just like this. Oh man, I should have gone for the cleanse pot first and then gone for the other healing potions. The sooner we can take that damage over time off, technically we're just healing more health. This guy got knocked over by the mob, so I try to get on top of him with the Greatsword, and he ends up just being out of range of the first part of the poke, but the second part hits him. Don't know how that happens, but that's okay. And we're at the end of this game because unfortunately this one was a sweep for the enemy team, but nice little gameplay there just using this build. I had a lot of fun on this guy throughout my entire time playing it on this map. So moving on to the next clip. I head towards the enemy spawn here, and this is something that I kind of actually liked about the new map, is how quickly you get from your spawn to the central point. There's always a lot of fighting around this central point, and if you're looking for something a little bit more small scale, you can go check out the other points. And I get on top of the fire staff player here, get great damage with my rapier, switch to the greatsword, get the cross cut, and a friendly player just coming in with that fireball to steal my kill. Oh, those fire staff players, man. But I just quickly go behind here, I heal up, and then this guy I catch with the stagger as he's about to wind up his burnout, and then I jump on top of him with my rapier here, switch to the greatsword, go for the spin again. He's just out of range from the last hit, and those pesky fire staff players, man, they end up taking the kill again. So I just go back into the next target here. I get good damage with the swipe on the light attack, and there's the ice spike to finish that guy off, and I just keep pushing forward here. I don't know, this build's super fun. It's got really good survivability, even in more open terrain. But look, even on that bridge, we got a little bit of feature to work with. I end up falling off the edge and take the really long way back up, mostly because I'm kind of exploring this map a little bit too. This was pretty early on in my time playing this map. This guy blows his stamina. Oh no, one light attack into the crosscut, and he ends up going down. Then I head back towards the bridge here. That guy throws the bomb down. I get on top of him with the rapier, go for the pokes. Just about finishing him off here, and there's the spin, and the dot takes him down. Then I've got 3 enemy players behind me here, and this is where I just love Rapier Greatsword, because we get stuck inside of that snare there, but the Rapier giving us the invulnerability when we go for the flurry. We switch to the Greatsword, get some stam back, and that's pretty deadly there. I get caught by the snare, but again, we've got that Rapier that's going to allow us to survive with the invulnerability. And these guys just stagger me to town when I'm in my gap closer, so I end up going down there. Moving on to the next clip, there is just a nice little example of the damage you can do on this build. Now, keep in mind, I'm running Grace on this guy, so if you ran a different weapon combo, maybe Finisher plus a Greatsword, or so many different options you can have, you can do a lot more damage with this type of a build. But I like the speed on it. I feel like the speed was really good, not only for staying alive, but kind of getting on top of targets that are trying to get away from you. That speed comes in really handy too. A lot of players coming through the doorway here. He's going for that flamethrower. We're going to punish that with the stagger on the greatsword. And then I get him with the flurry at the end there. And then I quickly turn around, and I got 2 players on top of me here. I feed that guy the heavy attack and pop my ultimate to make sure I don't get stunned there. And then he hits me with the sweep. Oh my gosh, I go back inside, quickly heal up, and it looks like a lot of players very low health there. I get a few good pokes on the musket player in the door. Then I go for the greatsword spin through here, and this is just a big part of playing this build. You want to be moving around a lot. You want to constantly be moving through the opponent players and using things like doorways and line of sight to help you out. And oh my god, really nice combo from the sword and shield player, and the musket guy just blocks me in the face. I end up going down there. There's a beautiful heavy attack into the crosscut from 100 to 0. That guy goes down. And I go for the rapier just to try to get a little bit more AoE damage there. I end up blowing my stamina, which is never what you want to do. But that's okay, no one ends up chasing me, and I just go through the group again, down the other side. I don't know what it is, guys. There's some kind of mentality to going through the enemy players that makes it easier to stay alive. When you run away, it's like it kicks in that chase reflex from them, and they just go after you. And then we got a lot of friendly players on this little breach here, and we're just putting a lot of damage in. And this is one thing I really liked about this map. Again, you know, those spawns being close means that there was always action. In the old OPR map, we're always in that transit time. Constantly, whenever you die, you have to spend half a minute or a full minute riding to the next fight or in between fights and stuff like that. Not on this map, man. I literally didn't mount up because there was always action every time I came out of that spawn. Big damage on that guy with my greatsword. I try to get him with the stagger, but he gets the heal just in time. And I go for the risky move, just trying to push in there. But unfortunately, lots of enemy players coming across the bridge. They are right by the spawn, so they have invulnerability. Maybe that's one thing, you know, outside of Amazon maybe making it so you can't crawl on top of these different features. Make the death run that you get coming out of spawn half as long as it is, because look at this guy here. He still isn't taking damage, and I'm trying to trade with him. And you just got to be really careful coming out of the doorway here. Either way, I get on top of the Rapier player. He gets me with the riposte as I'm in my flurry there, but I just swap weapons to break out of it. And I try to stick to him, get him with the Greatsword there. There's the light attack, the second one to finish him off. And now it's me and 2 enemy players on this bridge. Look at that. He's got a bow. The other guy is using a life staff, or a fire staff, sorry. So I'm just doing my best to stay on top of them. We don't have a lot of terrain to work with on the bridge, but because it's only 2 players, we can really take advantage of the movement going through these guys like crazy. It makes them miss a lot of shots. And now more and more enemy players end up showing up here. I didn't use a move there and jumped off the edge way too late, and I end up going down. All right, let's take a look at that build. So, starting off with the attribute points, Greatsword Rapier definitely favoring Dex, because Rapier is primarily going to scale from Dex, and Greatsword scales equally from Strength and Dex. That being said, going for 100 Strength is really good for this weapon combo because you get the 10% physical damage for going for that 100 Strength, not to mention all the additional damage that you get on your Greatsword, just the base damage from that Strength too. So even though Rapier doesn't scale from Strength, I do think that this is probably the best way to build this. I don't know, I tried a few different setups and this one gave me the best results. And then going for 50 intelligence, I think, is definitely worth it as well. Again, we're going to get a little bit of scaling on the Rapier there, so a little bit more base damage. But the big thing is that 5% increased critical damage and, of course, the 5% base damage to targets inflicted with the damage over time, which we can easily apply with the Greatsword heavy attacks. Now, we also have 50 focus and 200 con. I think with the changes to potions this patch, this is definitely the way to go if you want to play light melee. Maybe you don't have to go for quite 200. I think 150 con would be okay if you want to go a little bit more glassy and 350 dex or something, but definitely the 50 focus for the incoming healing. We're running lots of shirking heals on this build, plus this is going to affect your potions, just basically all healing. So this goes a really long way to self-sustain on this kind of a setup. Greatsword itself also has quite a few base heals, heals in its actual kit, so that helps a lot too. And then, of course, the 200 con. Just having the higher health pool is going to make it so much easier to take advantage of the fact that we're using regeneration serums. Now, you could use regular regen pots, but I definitely recommend the serums for the stam sustain that they give. This is definitely up to preference, but yeah, I think, at least for me personally, more stam sustain equals less damage taken, so you don't have to heal as much. Now, moving on to the weapon trees, starting off with our Greatsword. We've gone for a nice kind of onslaught-focused tree, but I do really like having Steadfast Strike, not only for the stagger that it provides, but the fact that you can get a lot of stamina back when you use it. This build in general generates stamina like crazy. Basically, all your attacks with both Greatsword and Rapier will generate stamina, and then we've got a whole bunch of other stuff that goes into that too. Relentless Rush, I just go for the first 2 here so we can get that 10% empower. Greatsword easily hits empower cap by itself, so we don't have to worry too much. I think this build is sitting at 53% empower if we dodge an attack, thanks to the dex points that we have. And of course, having 300 dex gives us that stun break on swap, which is a huge deal for a build like this too. Crosscut, again, we just go for the first 2. Having grit is a big deal for PvP, so we definitely want that. And I almost never complete the crosscut. I almost always will cancel it with a dodge roll, especially since Greatsword, after you dodge an attack, you gain 10% empower thanks to step and strike, and your next 3 hits will restore 10 stamina as well. So it's a very dodge-heavy weapon, and I think that plays well into canceling crosscut. A heavy attack into crosscut is the hardest burst that this build has, and it can do a ton of damage really quickly to your opponent. Now, even though we're running Grace, I still have Swift Onslaught. I like to stack as much haste as possible on a build like this. This build can easily hit the haste cap. I think we can get to like 60, maybe even 70% haste, but it is capped at 50%. So that's about as good as it gets. And then, of course, we want to go for the critical comeback for the healing that it gives. And then the rest of the build is very offensively focused, especially something like Keen Posture, one of my favorite perks for Greatsword, giving you a guaranteed crit after you enter Onslaught stance. Now, one thing I do want to mention is that Greatsword has one of the best blocks in the game. It can actually block ranged attacks 100% if you go for the arrow deflection perk. This is a huge deal. Not only is it going to make you block ranged attacks, but it makes your block cheaper in general, and it allows you to shut down ranged opponents if you get stuck in something like a root and you have to wait it out. And then I also like Faultless Defender because you're flick and block a lot if you're using it effectively on this build, and this will just heavily reduce the stamina cost of those blocks. Now, taking a look at the Rapier side of things, I'm running the same Rapier tree I've been running for years, guys. I mean, well, kind of. Usually, in the past, I would use Riposte. You could definitely go for it still too, but I've fallen in love with Flurry. With the Leeching Flurry perk, we get a second of invulnerability, which is a huge deal. And if you watch the footage, you saw there were multiple moments where Flurry not only saved me from taking a ton of damage, but it pulled a bunch of health out of my opponents and gave it to me as well. And then the rest of the Rapier kit, of course, we got to have Evade. The bread and butter of Rapier. You can do everything with this ability. You can attack, you can defend, everything. And then Flesh for that gap closer and the big damage it can do when you go through somebody and land that backstab. So the Rapier kit in general is basically all utility, and the Greatsword kit is going to hit a little bit harder thanks to the attribute spread that we have. So that's why we've gone for something like Crosscut on the Greatsword. Now, taking a look at the equipment this build is running. Starting off with the weapons, let's talk about Grace first. Like I said in the footage, you don't have to use Grace with this build. It's still very mobile. Just having this weapon combo in general makes you very mobile, but Grace just pushes it to a whole nother level. I love the offensive speed perk. It actually sticks to you after you weapon swap. So yeah, that's really nice. I went for Arboreal Attunement here. If you guys want to run a different perk, you can, like a weapon perk or something like that. But I like the attunement. I feel like because we're using a variety of different attacks, not just heavy attacks, this is probably the best way to go. We can't put Trenchant Strikes on Grace, unfortunately, because it has Vicious as well. But I think there's a good argument for something like Penetrating Backstab. Now, taking a look at the Rapier, again, you have options with this. You could go for the finisher instead of Grace. You could go for the new Dogart's Blade and add that burn to your heavy attacks on the Greatsword. You could even go for Serenity on the Greatsword. I mean, you could use any of the Rapier or Greatsword artifacts on a build like this, but for the Rapier in general, I do really like to have Omnidirectional Evade. Vicious is not bad. I would like to have Penetrating Backstab instead, but I'll take Vicious. And then Purifying Crits. Again, I think I would rather have Penetrating Backstab plus Vicious, but Purifying Crits is kind of funny. I didn't see a whole bunch of great use for it, but the nice thing about it, at least for me, is that you could strip people's haste, and it makes it easier to catch players if you have this perk. And there's a 3-second cooldown on it, so if you're swapping weapons while you're fighting, and this build you're swapping weapons a lot, you're going to have a good uptime on the Purifying Crits. Anyway, this was just the 725 Rapier that I rolled, so this is what I had to work with. So let's take a look at the armor that we're running here. The big perk that you want to have is Shirking Heals. Of course, if you have a pocket healer or you're playing in a group, you can get away with not having Shirking Heals. In fact, it might even be better to focus on more defensive perks than prioritizing Shirking Heals. But for a solo player, yeah, you gotta have it in PvP. It gives you that additional sustain. The next big important perks that we have here is health. You definitely want to have health on this build. I only have 2 out of 5 health on my armor. We could have an additional almost 1,000 hit points on this guy, so that would make a big difference, not only for our survivability, but our healing does scale from health as well for our potions, so that would make a nice change there. And then, of course, you want to have Hasted Vigor. I think this is a must-have perk in PvP in general. There are so many damage over time effects that you will proc this basically all the time while you're fighting if you get hit by stuff. And that 10% haste just stacks even further with all the other haste we have on this build. Of course, on my chest piece, you can see I have Leeching Flurry here. This is a must-have perk for the build too, giving you that invulnerability and, of course, the heal. If you watch the footage, there were definitely many times where Flurry saved my life. And then, of course, you want to have Refreshing. In general, Refreshing is just a great perk all around. And last but not least, let's take a look at the artifact that I'm running here. This guy is the Attuned Leather Pants. I really like these pants this patch because of all the additional stats they give. Not only does it make it easier to put together a build like Greatsword and Rapier that kind of scale from a bunch of different things, but the additional health that you get is a huge deal with the potion changes in PvP. I'm using regen serums on this build, so having a higher health pool means that we can take more advantage of the regen and not just get bursted down really quickly and rely on a burst heal to stay alive. So yeah, if you want to use the regular regen potions on this guy, you can. Again, I really favor the stamina over time that it gives, so I feel like this is better. And then last but not least, here are my boots. I have Contagious Upheaval. We're not using Sword and Shield on this build. The shield is purely cosmetic, guys. It doesn't impact my weight. It doesn't give me any stats. And these boots I picked just because I'm trying to hit those max stat points on this build. In order to reach these max stat points, you're going to need quite a few 725 pieces. I think a minimum of 4 725 pieces. If you have the best food in the game, if you have the plus 44 food, then you need to have 5 725 pieces in order to reach those stat points. The attuned leather pants must be 725 because of all the stats that they give. And finally, taking a look at the jewelry on this guy. I've got Acorn. I actually recommend Acorn for this build. If you have too much Magnify, it's really hard to put a stat build like this together. So Acorn giving focus plus the attuned leather pants puts us at 48 focus. Just 2 points in there, and we're golden. And then, of course, I've got the Gorgon's Ring. Now, you could go for Keen Awareness instead of Purifying Heart here. It's really up to the user. I prefer Purifying Heart. I gotta be honest. The fact that our Stone Form is going to heal us and remove all negative effects is so valuable in PvP. But, you know, that's me. You gotta have Healing Breeze and Hardy, though. Healing Breeze is easily procced by the Healthy Toast on the earring, and the Greatsword heal will also proc your Healing Breeze, so you'll have a really good uptime on this guy. And then last but not least, we've got the earring. Healthy Toast, Refreshing Toast, Regenerating. I don't know if you can get a 725 version of this, but this is so bis. Now, you could use whatever artifact piece of jewelry you want. I don't have the Ankh, and I didn't want to use Phoenix for this build, so I ended up going this route. It's really up to the user, but I don't think an artifact piece of jewelry is necessarily a must-have. If you have the Elemental Band, that's an option too, but again, we don't really have a lot of things to proc it, so I kind of think the 725 Gorgon Ring is better. Again, we're using the regen serums. You gotta have them. Use the Desert Sunrise to reduce the damage over time that you take. Also a big deal. And then I'm using the Banana Parfait because I have enough 725 pieces to use this type of food. I'm also using the Gold Touch Gemstone Dust in order to reduce incoming elemental damage. And I've got the mana potions for that heal that they give thanks to Healthy Toast. And last but not least, this empty slot is for cleanse potions in PvP. In open world, you don't have this option, but for PvP, man, those cleanse potions are absolutely amazing. And here's a quick look at the resists. I have heavily stacked fire resist. I've got some pretty decent thrust resist. You could go for more even resists on this build, honestly, because we're a full melee spec. Having some slash resist would be really nice, but you don't necessarily need it. The big issue that this build has is getting taken down by a bunch of ranged opponents, so that's what I build against for in PvP. Well, that's the build, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, whether you came here to see the build or you came here for the map, or for both, whatever. I hope you had fun. This has been a really fun build to play, and I will very likely come back to it, but I'm kind of feeling Rapier, Sword, and Shield right now. I don't know. I want to try another melee setup. Hopefully, we get to play this map again soon, and these setups will be a lot more fun to play. Anyhow, if you guys have some awesome clips that you want to send in for the top 5, send it to Kristofer at pvpnewworld.com. I actually have enough clips for the next episode, so look forward to it really soon. And of course, there is the written version of this build guide on the website, if that's more your flavor. Anyhow, thank you guys for watching. Again, I hope you enjoyed, and yeah, look forward to some more PvP in the near future coming from me. Have a good night, everybody, and I'll see you next time.